Hello everyone, and welcome back to One Control Report Podcast, episode 14. Here I am, I'm Benjamin Yoder, your sole person for this podcast. We are meant to be for the next 20 minutes, maybe. We'll see, unless you leave, then it's just me here by myself. So this week I have hopefully a better microphone setup. This is my first time really using it. Got me a stand here, and me a wind guard, and I think one thing that has probably been pretty noticeable in the few videos I have done in the last year or so is I'm not quite as bombastic sounding as before. The reason for this isn't so much a change in demeanor for me, it's just more of I live in a house with other people who care about sound now, so I have to try not to be as explosive as before. So I'm hoping eventually, whenever I end up moving out to my own place, that I can return to the loud noise, or not loud noise, but more confident sounding voice, I guess. Anyways, so yeah, it's for now, pretty much all my videos are probably going to have more subdued tone, at least in terms of how I deliver lines and things like that. But yeah, I've got myself a new little setup here, so hopefully it'll be a little easier since I won't have to speak to the side of a microphone anymore, and so it'll sound like I'm actually in your ear rather than just like somewhere in the room behind you. So this week I was looking over the news. I didn't really see anything too interesting worth talking about. There's probably some news that I probably could have talked about it, but just scrolling through my feed, nothing really jumped out at me. But I did see that Japan's PlayStation Network, I believe, was having a sale on HuneX games. And so I'm not entirely sure how familiar people are with HuneX. And honestly, there's probably really no reason to be familiar with HuneX. But they're a long-running company who's been developing games since, I believe, 1993. They were a collaboration between NEC Electronics and Human Entertainment, who probably is most well known for their Fire Pro series of games. There's probably some other... I'm sure there's tons of random PlayStation 1 games that they put out that some people have a fondness for, or like cult hits or things like that. But basically, this was a combination between NEC and HuneX to make games for the PC Engine, TurboGrafx 16, things like that. And they started with a game called Magical for the PC Engine. And unfortunately, the games I'm most familiar with for them are probably not the most popular games that people have played. But at least I can read off some names here from their early work. They have like Vasile 2. They worked on the PC Engine port of the name escapes me. Pop Full Mail. There's like 3 versions of that game. One for the PC Engine, one for the Sega CD, and one for the Super Nintendo. And I believe the Sega CD version is the original version, but I'm probably wrong. So, yay. But they worked on that PC Engine version of Vasile. So what I know them most for is their work on PCFX. The PCFX is a console put out after the PC Engine as a sort of successor to that system, and so now it's like a 32-bit system. The problem is that they didn't go for 3D graphics like Sony did, Sega with Saturn, and Nintendo with Nintendo 64. They prioritized 2D graphics, and that pretty much completely backfired. I mean, 2D graphics, I think today we can look back at it and say, oh yeah, obviously those are still really great. And I think at the time there were people who still really liked 2D sprite work and things like that. But from a business perspective, 3D was the way to go for a lot of these games. So the platform never really took off and never came out outside of Japan. But the one thing it did boast was the ability to, I believe it had 60 frames per second full motion video. It's either 30 or 60, but it basically had the best options to play full motion video at the time. And the intention, I think, was that, there's the new media back then where people were doing like the CDI and things like that. And it was part of that line of systems, I think. But it unsurprisingly never really took off. But it did house a lot of visual novels, a lot of anime licensed games, and games that take after the style of, mid-90s anime and things like that. And HuneX worked on a RPG for the system called Blue Breaker. And this RPG was but it's 2D side-scrolling RPG. There's like an overworld, but you kind of choose between places on the map to go. But the whole gimmick with the whole game is that you could date all your party member ladies. So you're the main character, and you could choose different companions at the end. Unfortunately, I have not played Blue Breaker specifically. I've only ever played its fighting game spin-off, Blue Breaker Burst, which is a bad, slow, sluggish PS1 fighting game. But they have a huge long history. They made a bunch of RPGs that are very kind of like, I wouldn't say doujin looking, but there are low budget anime RPGs and visual novels. And so as time goes on, you can see they did some stuff for the Dreamcast that was very similar in that style, but they eventually kind of went to doing just visual novels. There's a while where they did some simple series games, so that had a variety of different genres in it, but they started focusing almost entirely on porting visual novels to consoles. They also worked on some otome games. Let me see if I can see when they started working on otome games. That is not the right section. But they started working on otome games, and those seem to have gotten pretty popular. So PlayStation 2, their first one was on the Simple Series game, and so now they do a bunch of mobile game otome titles. Have London Detective Story, Colizone. I'm not sure what any of these are. I'm not super familiar with otome games. But so now they do a surprisingly diverse number of games between in the visual novel genre, doing more traditional straightforward harem stuff with a guy and a bunch of ladies, and then also otome stuff with a lady and a bunch of guys. They also did some educational games on the PSP for beauty and like how to get a boyfriend and things like that. It's really interesting. They just have such a huge number of games in their backlog that are kind of all over the place. They're likely just were trying to get by and making a lot of these games. But I wish I could speak about them more efficiently, but I've really only played Blue Breaker Burst from them, as well as the Mountaintop RPG that they did is called Silvery Peak or something like that, and it's like a simple series game as well. They also did Kira Kira Popstar on Nintendo DS if you're into rhythm games. Although I think the localized version of Kira Kira Popstar was horribly butchered, because we need to make these closer to Western appeals, and that means everything awful. I love video games localizations. I'm not going to go into this, but side note, there are a lot of good Imagine games that Ubisoft put out there, just Japanese games for Nintendo DS that were just put out as Imagine games. So if you look into the Imagine series, you can find some interesting things around, like Imagine Ice Champion. This week I did want to talk a little bit about some games I have been playing, and I've been playing a lot of online games, unfortunately, because they take so much fucking time, and when other people are around, you can't there's two problems. One, other people are around and you're busy doing something, so you feel bad and you feel like you have to play, or two, nobody's around and you really just want to beat it. I've been trying to beat God Eater forever, but I'm back on Final Fantasy 11, and I have a really long history with Final Fantasy 11, but I've been trying to finish up Seekers of Adullin, which is I would say the last official expansion pack that was a physical release that they put out. They eventually put out Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, which in my mind, it was always an add-on pack, but from what I've been talking to some people recently, it's actually more of a full expansion. But I've been playing a bit of that, and it's surprising how much of that stuff in that game you still need people for. They kind of for a long time the cap in Final Fantasy XI was level 75, and they eventually raised it up to 99. And then for a brief period of time, they did item levels, which is pretty standard for most online RPGs these days. I'm not sure if it's standard that the item level eventually just stops. In Final Fantasy XI, item level stops at 119, and then everything after that is all lateral additions. And it made a lot of content in that game really easy to complete. And then you also get like NPC characters who will help you fight. But once you get towards the end of Adulin, and it sounds like towards the end of Rhapsodies, it gets pretty tough. And I am very thankful that I have 2 other friends playing the game right now, because I would not have been able to solo any of this stuff. I'm fighting Hades right now, the last boss of Adulin. Spoilers. But yeah, I took on this terrible task of wanting to beat Final Fantasy XI. Final Fantasy XI is an MMO with an ending, which is crazy. In my opinion, that's crazy. Most companies wouldn't get that opportunity, and I think the only reason Final Fantasy XI did was because it still has a steady player base right now. But they probably looked at it and was like, we're not going to have this steady player base forever, and either we can just let the story fizzle out at some point, or we can have it have a bombastic ending. And I believe they still are adding like story bits, but they're separate from the overall tale of Vana'diel, the world of Final Fantasy XI. So that's what I've been playing right now. Also been playing a bit of Splatoon, trying to finish out my gear in that game. I'd like to 100% the original Splatoon just because I'm so close already. I'd rather just do it. But I bought a Switch bundle with Splatoon, which is I hate buying bundles because it's like a garbage tactic. But it had a Splatoons in it and a Splatoon case in it and a grip for Splatoon 2, but it's not a charge grip, which is like what's the point of that? The regular Switch grip makes no sense to me. Like, just make it a charge grip. I will pay the extra money if you make it a charge grip, please. I don't know. I might see if I can, like, I doubt it, trade it in for something to get something towards a charge grip, but I'm guessing if I do, it's like $2. On the bright side, it's Splatoon themed, but even that, it's not a charge grip. It's useless. I haven't held the controller myself, but I feel like I'd rather just use the controller without the grip at all. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and, even though I'm talking largely about games I've already played, and I guess I talked about HuneX a little bit, but their history is way too expansive for me to cover in 8 minutes, and I have not played nearly enough of their games to talk intelligently about their lifespan. I would love to. I have the original Blu-Breaker, haven't played it yet because I'm an idiot. And I take forever to do stuff. But we're going to open that cookie, that fortune cookie, and see what game we get. Hopefully it's not Final Fantasy XI. If it is, I'm going to repull it. I'm going to repull it because I haven't played this one. It was Kid Icarus. Oh, you know what? This is the problem. I only had unfinished games selected. Unfinished and unplayed. So it's going to be a bunch of games that I own, I have not played, like Kid Icarus Uprising. I did start Kid Icarus Uprising, but we'll talk about that at a later day when I have more thoughts on it other than this is a video game. Okay. Well, Kingdom Hearts 2, I guess. Not a big Kingdom Hearts fan. I played Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. Kingdom Hearts 1, I won't spend too much time on Kingdom Hearts 1, hopefully, was the first game I got on the PS2, along with Castlevania Lament of Innocence. And I don't know what it is about Kingdom Hearts. I just don't like it. Like, I didn't grow up with Disney, so I don't have a strong affinity for any of the Disney worlds or characters. And I remember the gameplay just being, like, really, really simple. And so I played Kingdom Hearts 2, I guess 11 years ago now. It's been a long time. I just didn't like it. I don't like the Disney story. I thought the Operation or whatever they're called, Order 13 something, 13-2. I think that they're called like something 13. Anyways, I thought their story was okay from what I remember when I was a kid. Well, 16. That's a kid, right? And I just don't remember anything else about that game. I remember like you got like 2 keyblades or something. I don't know. I just my biggest memory of that game is that it's super repetitive, and that the story doesn't really matter most of the time. And I don't really care about Disney, so I didn't have a strong affinity to any of the worlds. Any of the Disney worlds I did like were worlds that had unique visual styles, like the Steamboat Willie one. I remember that being pretty cool. I also think the Tron one at the time I liked as well. And I think at the time I was excited for the Pirates of the Caribbean one. I wouldn't say I was a big Pirates of the Caribbean fan, but I enjoyed the movies. And I don't know, it just didn't work for me. But keep in mind, this was 11 years ago now. And we're still don't have Kingdom Hearts 3, but that's okay, because they put out 30 billion other games in the meantime. I'm an idiot, and I want to play 358 divided by 2 days, because it's on the Nintendo DS, and it's a 3D game, and it's a 4-player local co-op game that I'll never play 4-player local co-op with, because I have nobody to play 4-player local co-op with in person, because all my friends are on the internet. So, yeah, it's just, Kingdom Hearts in general is a series I'd really like to get back into, or at least give it another shot, rather, is maybe the better phrasing, since I didn't really like the original games that much. I think there's something I could like there. I'm a fan of kind of like lighthearted stories and stuff like that, and I think there are some games that do kind of the adolescent but still satisfying story combination really well. And I can't think of any off the top of my head. But I think Kingdom Hearts has the potential to bring me in. I just don't know what I need other than a better battle system from what I remember. But again, been a long time. And also, back then, I had a very different philosophy with kind of RPGs and stuff, even though Kingdom Hearts is more like an action-adventure game. But there are RPG elements where if I couldn't do something, instead of trying to solve the problem, I would just brute force it even harder. So I remember there were a lot of boss fights where I got stuck, and I just grinded away at them without ever thinking about what to do differently. And I think when I was 16, I probably hadn't wring that out of my system nearly as much. There's a long time where I was really, really bad about it. I think I've gotten a lot better now. But yeah, that's the case. So we'll see. Maybe I'll play Kingdom Hearts 3. Maybe I'll play another Kingdom Hearts. Giant Bomb recently did their first episode of like a series of Kingdom Hearts videos. And I think I'll watch it. I don't think I'll ever go back to Kingdom Hearts 1, and I think I'm curious to re-see that game. So seeing someone else play it might be a good time, and I generally like Giant Bomb as a personality-based video game website, which is not true for most other personality-based video game stuff. I generally hate Let's Plays and most YouTube stars. I'm sorry, everyone, I'm sorry. I'm going to be a YouTube star one day. No, you're not going to be a YouTube star. You're going to podcast here by yourself on One Controller Report Podcast, episode 14. So thank you all for listening. Hopefully this audio hasn't been awful. If it's like a train wreck, I just won't publish this episode probably. But if it's not a train wreck, and it just sounds bad to some extent, you're just going to get some bad audio. And I'll have to learn from my lessons. But hey, these podcasts don't really matter, so this is the place to learn it before I try to record audio for a video, and then have to re-record audio for a video, and then it sounds terrible because I'm reading at different times at different inflections. It's terrible. I hate re-recording audio. So this gives me an opportunity to say, hey, how does this audio sound? Is it terrible? because I'm actually seeing some pretty bad lines here now that I look at it. Well, I'll end the show before I start messing with that too much. So thank you very much, everyone, and you have a good week. Bye.